Hello, I'm Sarah. This is Hardcover Hearts, and I'm here to talk about books this week. I had a really kind of monumentous accomplishment this week in reading a book that I did not have a chance to tell you about last week. So I want to make up for that and tell you about what I completed and then what I'm in the middle of. So let's just jump right in. Okay, so in anticipation of this book that just came out, and this is the Empusium by Olga Tokarczuk, translated by Antonia Lloyd-Jones. I'm not sure if you can see this cover. I knew that because this is kind of a retelling or a response to, an answer of Thomas Mann's The Magic Mountain, I knew I had to read The Magic Mountain in order to get here. I have not read it, and I have not read it because, oh man, it sounded so intimidating. You know, this whole idea of, you know, this masterpiece of German literature from the last century that was filled with philosophical treatises and tomes and debates and that is kind of wrapped up in music and themes, and it just felt weighty. It felt really heavy. It felt I don't know, like there wasn't really a way in for me to enjoy it. It felt like something I had to do as opposed to wanting to do. But for some reason, sometimes the book gods just ping you and say, now's the time. And it was the time. So I went online and I looked for an audio and a written version. But realistically, I knew that I would only be tapping into the digital, and really leaning heavily on the audio. And so that's what I did. And 36 hours of audio later, I have completed Thomas Mann's The Magic Mountain. Now, let me say that I don't think that I took everything in, but I don't think I would have taken everything in even if I had read it, because there are just pages and pages of really deep philosophical debate between characters. But I did glean what I wanted to from the reading. And I think it's something that, should I want to come back and revisit in a decade or so down the road, I now know what to expect from it. So what is this about, you ask? Let me tell you. So The Magic Mountain was written by Thomas Mann, and 1924 is when it was published. And it's set in Davos, Switzerland, the Davos we know from the economic forums and the specific conferences that they have in Davos in modern day. But back in the day, it was known as kind of a health retreat for people who were suffering from tuberculosis. And so there's this very majestic hotel that is set in the mountains. And so it feels kind of dreamy, very luxurious. There's a whole crew of people who have been there for stretches of time, some years, there to take the cure. And as they're there, you meet all of these different characters. Now, our main character that we're following, and we have a narrator that kind of observes with us. It's a very interesting way that he did it. And we're following Hans Castorp. And Hans Castorp is young, he's 20, and he's there to see his cousin. So his cousin, Joachim, is sick, has been sick. And so he wants to spend a little time with him before he starts his official work career. And his cousin, Joachim, is a professional soldier. And so he's had to stall his career in order to go in and to get this cure, and to hopefully be cured of tuberculosis. They have a close relationship, and it's very evident that they enjoy each other's company, and they're So it's a really nice introduction to Hans Castorp, that he's able to be introduced to the rhythms, the rituals, the people, the staff of this huge hotel sanatorium. And you very quickly see this is a rarefied environment. Everything is done for them, and so it allows the people who are there to feel kind of cosseted and protected from what's happening outside in the world. And what's happening outside is the kind of the raging and starts of World War I. So we have this group of people, and you usually meet them through the different meal times, dinner time, and then getting introduced to the people who are sitting at the table with Joachim and Hans Castor. There are a few characters that are stand-ins for philosophical points of view. And so their characters are really drawn to have that. And it kind of felt like, your kind of blowhardy uncle who shows up at family dinner, and you're like, oh God, here it comes. And so every time those characters showed up, you knew that there was going to be, some lecture about something and how it relates to their point of view of the world. And so in a lot of ways, those characters helped to kind of educate Hans Castorp on the different ideologies that have come out post the Enlightenment. So there's one, Settembrini, and Settembrini is a humanist. He's an Italian, and Hans Castorp spends a lot of time with him. There's another gentleman, his name is Nafta, and Nafta is a Jesuit communist, totalitarianist. And so he has very strong points of view. And then another gentleman is Peppercorn, and he is a Dutchman, a Dionysian Dutchman. So you've got all of these competing philosophies, and this is really the coming of age of Hans Castorp as he's kind of being pitched. Ironically, instead of being pitched out into the world, he's being pitched into this very secluded environment where not a lot of things happen. So it's almost this almost university style education for him on how other people in the world, other people different from him, think. Then there's also a romance between he develops feelings for a young woman, Madame Claudia Chauchat, and he is obsessed with her. And I have to admit, I was kind of obsessed with her because she's supposed to have horrible posture, kind of bad manners, kind of does what she wants to do, only pays attention to things that matter to her. So I'm really, really, really hoping that we get something from her point of view in Olga Tokarczuk's book, but we shall see. For me, the things that I really enjoyed were the human connections, less the philosophical, even medical treatise that we were kind of subjected to through this book. And I get it. That's its unique nature and why it's so important. But for me, that was less of what appealed to me in the book. I really found the obsession with health to be quite interesting, health and illness, and where they were at the time in cures and curing illness, and all of the things that we're so used to being, some things being new and still theoretical. And you could see how people could very easily be trapped in that environment, trapped in that very safe and protected world where their health is looked at intimately, and they take the airs at night where they sleep out basically on a bed wrapped in blankets and all of their clothes just to get the fresh air. And you can imagine how utterly freezing that must be. And one of my favorite moments was Joachim was walking around, and his cousin called it with his glass cigar, which was his thermometer in his mouth, because he would sit with it for 7 minutes to get his temperature. So that all of that about their health, the obsession they had with their health, given the fact that we live in such a health-obsessed society, I found those parallels quite interesting. I found the question of time and how time works in this, as I said, rarefied space. It goes very, very slowly, but also very quickly in certain circumstances and situations. I can see how this could lend itself to horror aspects, because there were times when I felt a little claustrophobic, that he was never going to leave this place, because just as he would get ready to, something would happen. Just as it was getting, it was feeling like, okay, I don't know how this is going to end. I don't know where this is going. The ending ended up actually being incredibly poignant. I think the ending was incredible and made me, and actually made me want to reread it. Again, not immediately. I think it'll be something like, a few decades. But now that I have the context, I know the characters, I know what he was trying to do with the book, I can see why it's viewed as a masterpiece of his time, because it's documenting so many things that were happening in that moment in that part of the world, as we're shifting, and right before World War I. So I'm quite proud of myself that I got it done. And then my understanding that Olga Tokarczuk's book is wrestling with monarchy and democracy, as opposed to the question of like the Enlightenment and communism or humanism and all of these types of things. So really curious, and I'm curious to see if she brings any of the same guests. I don't know. I don't want to know too much other than that as I go into it. So I'm teeing this up for a little later on this month. So yes, having completed that, so that felt fantastic. And then I needed something a lot lighter, just very, very different, because that's a heavy piece of literature to have just gone through. So I looked in my holds, and sure enough, something came up, and it was something that I've seen on a bunch of different best of lists. Now, I didn't think I was going to read this. I feel like I've read things like this, and so I was like, I wasn't that interested. But Sian from Pastori Time had said that she really liked this. I think that's who said it. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sian. But it's Piglet by Lottie Hazell. And I was turned off by the name, to be honest. But I should have trusted Sian and just picked it up when Sian said it was great. So I again did this in audio, and I just binged this completely. This is a story of Pippa. Pippa is, she's living her best life. She has been crafting this life and building this life for herself. She is someone who loves food, has a deep love of culinary arts. She is a food editor for books about food, like recipe books, cooking books, and works at a publishing company that specializes in that. She is going to be married and has just moved into her first home in Oxford with her fiance, Kit. There is a class divide between the two of them. Kit comes from a lot of privilege, and his family is a little chic, a bit snobby, and her family is way down to earth. They don't really understand Pippa's love of all of this fancy food and all of that. They're more meat and potatoes, down home, just salt of the earth type of family. She has a sister who's married, who's her younger sister, and then her mother and father. They really are happy for her, and we see her about 3 weeks before her wedding. They've just moved into their new home. They're getting everything ready, and they're starting to do the preparations for the wedding. And at about 2 weeks before the wedding, after a night out on the town with her fiance, he gives her a confession that he has done something for either 3 years or 3 years ago into their relationship. I think it was for 3 years. He had been continuing to do something. We are never told what it was. And it shocks her. But she's so shocked that she both doesn't know how to stop the train of what's going on, or to process, because there's so much going on. There's so many things that have to be done. And so she's kind of propelled forward in this movement toward this wedding, and to disastrous consequences. It's been a while since I have read a book that made me kind of yell like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. And yet this was that book. I enjoyed it. I think it felt very real. I could see how this could happen. It was frustrating. It got right up to the line of absurd, but didn't cross over. It did get extreme, but without moving into the surreal. So it had a chance of going a little night bitch. I forget who wrote that book, where the woman kind of loses her marbles and becomes a feral dog because of motherhood. It could have gone that way, but I'm very glad that she stopped it and didn't take it to that full extreme, because I think we've seen that as a way to talk about the changes that women go through in their lives. And so this was right enough. Yeah, so I appreciate very much that the author never dwelt on what he had done. Everything was about her responses to whatever it was. And I think that allowed us to really focus on her and what she was going through, which I think was incredibly effective for this book to work. So yeah, I'm sorry that I had left it for so long. It was really good. It's not very long, so I was able to kind of knock it out very quickly. But those are the 2 books that I read this week. Now let me tell you what I'm currently reading. So I am still making more progress through The Long-Winded Lady by Maeve Brannan. And so as I mentioned, these are essays from The New Yorker. And these are written between 1954 and 1981. And you really get a sense of a different New York, old New York. And now we're starting to move into more modern or recent. I mean, modern. I say modern and I just remembered that, oh my God, the 80s to some of you may not even been born yet. So of the last century, how about that? So yeah, but the voice is very clear and the vignettes are very New York. It's slices of life. If you have always been fascinated with New York and New York culture, the New York way of living, and what New York City means, what it means to be the Big Apple and the center of, this thriving metropolis, this would be a great book to dip into, because she's captured so much of what makes the city the city. So yeah, I would say maybe about 10 or 12 left to go, but I'm just kind of taking my time. I am also now through the second third of Isabel Colegate's Orlando King. This is what I'm reading with the Author Spotlight series, the group of people that I read a collection of books by specific authors, and we're reading Isabel Colegate right now. She has taken a different tone from the first book. This is a collection, basically a trilogy bound up in one volume. So the first book had a little bit more time jumps back and forth. And it's always interesting when you jump forward. Usually you get reflections back and explanations and backstory. This was more jumping ahead and saying what was going to happen and teeing that up for the story. She has stopped that now in the second book, and it allows for a kind of more linear, clearer narration. And we get a main character, Orlando King, who is very different than the young hotshot that we met in book 1. And her craft, her sentences are very, very beautiful. This reads, it's definitely taking on the, like a reinterpretation of a Greek tragedy. We have the main character who has become lost his sight, and so he has very poor vision. And the way she writes about that is exquisite, and that stands in for and allows him to do certain things and to experience and to withdraw, but also to get closer to things than he would have if he was able to see. So the way she's crafting that situation is beautifully rendered. And so we just talked about the second book in this, and we're about to read the last third. So I'm very curious to see how she concludes this story with the last book here. Then I'm listening to a book in it, just as I did with Magic Mountain and the Empusium. I'm doing the exact same thing in anticipation to read this book. This is Julia by Sandra Newman, which is a retelling of 1984. So it's been so many years since I've read 1984. Of course, I remember the highlights, but I don't remember it with the depth that I would need to make a retelling valuable. So I am doing on audio, I'm doing 1984. So I just started that today, and I'm picking up all sorts of things that I missed the last time I read it. I think I read it in early 2000. So I definitely plan on getting to hopefully this and the Olga Tokarczuk before the end of the year. This is really the year of retellings, isn't it? I mean, James had a huge success. I thought it was incredible. That was Percival Everett's book, take on the Huck Finn tale from Jim, the Jim character, or as he says, James. So that was a phenomenal book if you haven't had a chance to read that. And then today, it's still afternoon, even though it's going to start to get a little darker. And I have quality time to do nothing now that all of my errands are done, and I'm going to pick up this. I know I teased that I wasn't sure if I was going to pick it up, but enough of you last week said, yes, I probably should read this, especially if I liked Normal People, which I did very much. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time with this one today. And that is it. That is all I have to talk about today, keeping it a little lighter because last week I talked a lot more because I had many more books to talk about. But this is it for me for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll look forward to talking to you hopefully next week. Bye.